Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hi students, welcome to the session. In this session, we are going to start with the new chapter, that is Getting to Know Plants. Students, in this session, we are going to talk about how important it is to understand the various kinds of plants that are there around us. Now, you must have noticed different kinds of plants around you whenever you must have gone out for, say, a walk with your friends to play in the garden, even around your home and school. You must have noticed there are different kinds of plants. Some of them are really big and tall. Some of them are really small. Some of them have huge flowers with various colors, and others might be having no flowers at all, right? So in this way, we see that there are variety of plants around us. And this is very important for us to understand that these varieties can be further classified. And to do this, first we need to understand the different parts of a plant. Once we understand the different parts of the plant, these parts will help us in recognizing the different kinds of plants that we have around us, right? So before doing this, let's first see the kind of plants that we see, right? So as you can see in this very picture, you will find that there are different types of plants that are around you that vary in size, shape and color, right? So the flower are different colors, right? Then you can see that these plants are quite small as compared to this one. Then you must observe that there are even bigger plants than these ones which you are seeing. When we talk about the different parts of the plants, we have flower, fruit, stem, leaf and root, right? So these are the four basic types of parts that we have, and depending on these parts we are able to recognize the plants, and we are going to study all of these parts in detail. Before we do so, we will first classify the different kinds of plants that we observe. Now, before we go ahead and start the classification, first let's do an activity, and it's a very fun activity for you and you will enjoy doing it. What you are going to do is, in this activity, that you will go outside with your friends. Please take the guidance of your teacher so that you're able to understand that what all things you need to observe. First, you need to observe that the plants that are much smaller than you. Means that when you are standing up, these plants should be really small. Maybe they should come below your knee, and they should be really small plants, right? So first of all, you will observe the stems and stems of these kind of flowers, right? Second, plants that are about your size, meaning the plants which are as tall as you are, right? Or maybe a little bit more, that's it, not more than that, right? So these are these plants which you are going to study, the stems and branches. And the third type is the plants that are much taller than you, right? So all these three categories you're going to study. What you're going to study in these three things are the stem and the branches, right? These three things you'll study, and you will see that what kind of the characteristic does the stem bear. Whether you are able to bend the stem. While doing so, student, I would suggest that you should be very careful that you do not break the stem, right? So just hold the stem and try to see whether or not you are able to bend them, right? How do they feel when you hold them, whether they are soft or whether they are hard, right? Then when you look at trees, right? So when you look at tall trees, just hug them and see that how big are they. In this way, you will find that there are different kinds of plants depending on the kinds of stem that they have. You will find that some of the plants have stem which is really soft. It is green in color, whereas other plants might have the stem which is thin and it is hard, right? It's comparatively harder than the plants which have green stem, but they are thinner. Whereas when you look at the trees, you will find that the trees have really hard and big stems, right? So in this way, based on the stems, we can classify the plants. Also, another thing which you can look at is how does the branching occur. Now, if you look at this plant, students, from here, this is the main stem and these are the branches, right? These are the branches. So what you're going to notice in this particular part is the branches that you're going to notice, whether the branches are on the top of the stem, that means the stem is growing and the branching is over here, right? Or the branching has started from the ground level, right? So in this way, you're going to notice that from where exactly the branching has started. Once you notice this, then based on these characters, we will be able to classify the plants. Now, all these observations you should do with 4 and 5 of your friends. If you're doing this as a class activity, please make groups of the students so that you can observe many plants without harming any of the plants, right? Now, this activity can also be done with the help of weed. What are weeds? These basically are small grass-like structure. These are the unwanted plants that grow in the crops. Many times you must have seen that if you have a gardener, you must have observed that the gardeners pull out small plants that are not useful, or they grow in, suppose if you have a flower bed, and in those there are some plants which do not bear the flowers. These kind of plants which are unwanted are called as the weeds. So you can use these weeds also to observe, right? Now,
to study the parts of a simple flowering plant. Requirements: freshly uprooted petunia plant, hand lens, a trough half filled with water. Procedure: dig out a small-sized flowering plant of petunia. Wash the complete plant with intact roots with water. Put it on the table with a sheet of paper beneath it. Spread all the parts carefully and study each part one by one. Draw the diagram of the complete plant and then draw each part separately. Label the diagrams and write comments. Observation and comments. The entire plant body comprises of a root system and a shoot system. Root system. Root system consists of the main root or primary root which remains under the soil in normal conditions. It is non-green and seems to be an extension of the stem below. From the main root, the secondary or lateral roots arise. These further bear branches as tertiary roots and root hairs. The secondary roots with all its branches spread in all directions. Such a root system is called as taproot system. Shoot system. Shoot system is the portion of plant which is aerial, that is, remains above the ground in normal conditions. The stem has nodes and internodes. All the parts of the plants like leaves, flowers, buds, branches, etc. arise from the nodal areas of the stem. Internode is the portion of the stem between two successive nodes which does not bear any appendage. It is meant for longitudinal growth of the stem. There is a bud at the terminal end of the main axis of the stem. This is the terminal bud. Axillary buds are present in the axil of the leaf, where it is attached to the stem. Leaf. The leaves arise from the nodes, making an angle with the stem or the branch. A leaf has a green, flat, expanded portion having veins and veinlets and a main midrib. It bears a bud in its axil. Flower. A flower is a specialized reproductive shoot. After a period of vegetative growth, some vegetative buds may get modified to give rise to a flower.
Coming to the table that you're going to make, this is the table that we're talking about. First of all, write down the plant name, then write down its height, then whether it is, look at the stem, whether it is green, tender, thick and hard. So tender means it should be soft, right? Where do the branches appear? Whether the branching is happening at the base of the stem. Base of the stem means near the root system, that is near the soil. Higher up on the stem, meaning that the plant will grow a little in height and then the branching will start. Then you will write down the category of the plant. So based on all these observations, students, there are three kinds of plants. One is herbs, then you have shrubs, and then you have tree. These are the three main categories into which these plants that we see around us are classified. Now, let's fill these, I will explain it to you and fill some of the plant information of plants so that you are able to do the activity properly. First of all, let's say we observe the plant of tomato, right? Then, what is the height? So, height, you will have to check that whether it is short, whether the height is very tall, or whether the height is about your height. Remember how we were classifying the plants when we were observing them? Whether they are shorter than you, whether they are really taller than you, or whether they are your height, right? So, tomato, you will see that these are short. Then look at the stem, you will observe that the stems are green and they are tender. Then you will observe that let's observe is mango, right? So now mango, you will see that the height is very tall, right? It's a very tall tree. Then whether the stem is green, no. Whether it is tender, no. Then what is it? It's thick, definitely, and it is hard. And where does the branching occurs? The branching, whether it is occurring at the base of the stem, no. Actually, it is occurring higher up on the stem. So, next, again, we are going to categorize these plants, but first let's understand the different features that we have observed. Let's suppose you observed a lemon tree. So, you will see that the lemon plant is about your height, right? So, about, you can write down about my height, right? Then, whether the stem was green, so no. Whether it was tender, no. Whether it was thick, no. It will be hard, right? It will not be thick, it will be hard. And where do the branches appear? So, you will see that the branches will start appearing at the base of the stem, right? Now, let's categorize. The plants which have tender and green stems are usually, and they are really short, are usually categorized in the herb category. Then the plants which are very tall and they have thick and hard stem and the branching starts higher up on the stem is called as the tree. Other plant, that is the lemon, which the stem is not green, it is not tender, it is not thick, it is actually hard and thin, right? These kind of stems are seen in a plant category that is called as the shrubs. A rose is also another shrub which you will observe, right? So students, now let's move on and talk about each of these categories. First of all, let's talk about the herbs. Now these are all the examples of the herbs and you will find all of these examples easily around you. So this is a radish. This is a carrot, right? This is spinach, right? And this is beetroot. And all of these come under the category of your herbs. Now, if you look at the stem, what is the stem like? You can see over here the stem, this is the stem and it is green in color. Over here you can see it is green in color again. The stem is green and tender. The stem is green and tender, right? So tender means that it's very easily, you can break it up, right? So it's very soft, right? So the herbs, these are usually, first of all, the stem is green and tender and they are usually short, right? So these are very short. Whenever in the winter season, you will observe that these radishes actually come along with the whole plant, right? So we know that radish is the root part of the plant, and you will observe that this whole plant actually comes along, and when you're going to buy it, you can either take these leaves with you, or sometimes you can just remove the leaves and then you can eat only the radish. So, but what I'm trying to tell you over here is it's very common plant and you will be able to observe it easily. Even in the spinach, you can easily observe that there are big leaves, right? These are the leaves, and this is the tender stem that we are talking about, and the stem is green in color. So plants which have green and tender stem and are usually short and they do not have many branches, right? So do not have many branches, right? So such kind of plants are called as the herbs. Now these are the shrubs. Over here, as you can see, the stem is hard, right? It is quite hard, but it is not as thick as the tree. So the shrubs have hard stem. Apart from that, the branches develop near the base of the stem, right? So it will develop near the base of the stem. So such kind of plants are called as the shrubs. The examples are rose, lemon, right? China rose. All of these are the example of a shrub. Now, moving on, when we talk about another very common plant category, it is the tree, and you can see the stem is hard and thick. Hard and thick stem, right? So it's a very hard and thick stem. Apart from that, these are very tall, and the branching is at the top of the stem, right? So as you can see that the plant will grow to a certain height and then the branching will start, right? So this kind of plant is called, or this plant is categorized as trees, right? So it's very easy, you can observe easily that how these plants are categorized, right? Now students, I hope you were able to understand these three categories. Now based on these characteristics, I'm pretty sure that you will be able to classify some of the plants into all of these categories. You will be able to recognize them as herbs, shrubs or trees, right? Now let's move on and answer a question that Paheli has. Paheli wonders what kind of stem the money plant, beanstalk, gourd plants and grapevines have. Do observe some of these plants. How are these different from a herb, a shrub or a tree? Why do you think some of them need support to climb upwards? Now usually the money plant, I'm pretty sure every one of you must have observed the money plant. When you look at the stem, you will think that okay, maybe money plant is a herb because the stem is green and it is tender. Similarly, when you look at the gourd plant or your grapevines, you will see that okay, the stem is tender and green. You might want to categorize it into the herbs. But students, these are neither herbs nor shrubs nor a tree. The reason is that these plants actually need support because the stem is not able to support their weight. The problem is that stem is very weak. When we were talking about herbs, herbs are able to stand upright, right? They do not need support of any kind and they are usually standing upright on their own. Whereas when we talk about the money plant, beanstalk and plants like these plants actually need support to grow, right? The grapevines also need support and they start to climb. Suppose if you want to grow a grapevine, you actually grow it near a shed so that the grapevine can start, it can start climbing up on the shed. Now in these categories also there are two types. One is called as the creeper and other is called as the climber. Let's understand both these categories in a little better way. So these are the two kinds. One is the creeper and other is the climber. Now the name is pretty clear. You will be able to understand these by its name itself. Creepers are the plants which actually creep along the ground, right? So these are the plants which creep along the ground, right? They do not actually climb. They are just creeping along, right? So that means that suppose if this is the soil or ground, these plants actually grow in this direction, right? And they start spreading in this direction. As you can see, this is a cantaloupe. It's a muskmelon. It's a category of a muskmelon. And you can see how these plants are actually growing along the ground, right? Others are the climbers. The next category are the climbers, and these actually climb onto the support. Climb the support. Whether this support is a plant, right, a tree that is, or whether it is a man-made support like this, these plants are able to climb with the help of this structure, and it is called as the tendril. And it is a modification of the stem which helps these plants to climb up. As you can see how the tendril wrap around the support and helps the plant to grow. And over here also you can see this is a tendril, and you can look at the structure, how the structure is a little curled up, and this structure actually facilitates the climbing of this particular plant. So students, these are another two types, creepers and climbers, which you must have seen around yourself also. It's very easy to differentiate between the two. Again, these creepers are the ones which will grow along the ground, whereas climbers are the one which will climb up the support, right? So this is the main difference between the two. I hope you were able to understand the difference between all the categories of the plants that we've studied. And next time, whenever we take up an example, whenever I will give you an example, or any of your teachers or friends will give you an example, you will be able to tell them what will be the category of that plant. Now, let's move on and answer some questions.